Ladies and gentlemen, Decaf Nation, welcome back to the video. Today we're kind of kicking it old school a little bit here. We're just going to be having a nice sit down and talk video about a specific topic that I want to talk about. This comes up a lot in the NASCAR community, and I think it's pretty timely right now. So we're going to talk about that. I have a few things that I want to talk about before we get into that quickly. Number one is I'm considering starting a NASCAR Heat 5 League on PS4, so let me know if you guys would be interested in that. I don't know if there'd be any interest in that. If there is, I would definitely be up to do that. So yeah, let me know. And then other than that, I had one more thing I was going to say. Oh yeah, so in the background of this video, you will notice it's Need for Speed Payback. It is not Heat 5 except for the intro here. And that is because I wanted to play that instead. That is the simplest explanation of all time. That's all I gotta say. And yeah, there's that. But also, I know you guys are going down to the comments right now. You're gonna be like, "Oh, you suck at Need for Speed. You suck. You're so bad." Yeah, I am bad. I know. You don't have to tell me. Plus, it was in ranked, so that's free pass right there. It's in ranked. Doesn't count. Doesn't matter. That's all I gotta say. Okay. Okay. Now, without further ado, let's just get into it here. Today we're talking about the NASCAR Playoffs. Now, the NASCAR Playoffs have been a hot-button topic ever since they were introduced in 2004 as a Chase for the Cup Playoffs format. Now, the way it originally worked was 10 drivers, 10 races. The person who scored the most points out of those 10 races would be considered the champion. Fairly straightforward. Divisive at the time. Looking back, not that divisive, okay? It's essentially just a little bit of a playoffs. Pretty much every other sport has it, but yeah, they added that. It has since changed very, very much. There are now 16 drivers. It's now formatted like an actual playoff bracket, where 4 drivers are cut from the bottom each round, and the most divisive is the win and you're in format. Now, this obviously, there are 2 ways that this can go, right? And they're very different from each other. And I can honestly see where they're both coming from, right? So there are 2 sides of the coin, and I'm mostly going to be playing one, but I'm also going to give a little bit of credit to the other one because it does make sense. Now, the first side is going to be, spoiler, I'm not going to be going with this one, but it harms the competition, which is definitely fair enough, right? Because it can be completely unindicative of who actually did well that season, right? So essentially, think about it this way, right? Austin Dillon wins the Daytona 500 like 2 years ago. He's essentially guaranteed a spot in from that point on because of winning you're in. So say he gets in there, right? That's the only he wins that one, finishes pretty much, maybe not last place, but we'll say like 25th every other race, right? Gets in. Wins the first race of the playoffs, right? Other 2 races, finishes last. Okay? Gets into the next round. Wins again the next round. Finishes last again. He's just doing terrible every week except 1 week he'll win. So he's in the round of 8. He wins again, gets to the round of 4. And in the round of 4, it's 1 race. All the other 3 people crash. He finishes 25th and wins the championship, right? So theoretically, that is a possibility, which is, that creates obviously a big hole in the logic of this. There are some situations where this absolutely does not make sense, right? And I think that is a valid and fair argument. But what I think is almost a better argument, from a fan standpoint, that is, not from a driver standpoint. From the team standpoint, this honestly kind of sucks. But from a fan standpoint, I think that this makes it so much more entertaining than it could be, right? Because let me lay out another scenario for you then from this standpoint. So I was born in 2004, the same year as the chase started. So I can't really speak much to this, but I'm just gonna, weave a, fake story that probably happened somewhere along the line. Not with these exact same drivers, but I'm just gonna come up with a story that's plausible, right? So let's say 1998, right? Jeff Gordon wins, 13 races, let's say, okay? And by the time he has won his 8th race, 21 races into the season, he has just, it's essentially over. He's got like a 400-point gap to, let's say, Mark Martin, because I feel like that was somewhat of those numbers might be right, but I feel like there was a scenario like this in 1998 with Jeff Gordon and Mark Martin. So he's ahead by like 500 points. It's essentially over by like halfway through the season, and he just keeps winning. What fun is that for the rest of the season? You know what I mean? Like, if that thing, right, without the playoffs, was still in effect today, this season of NASCAR would just suck, right? Because Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick would be so far ahead that it wouldn't even be fun, right? It would just be a two-man show, and in fact, Denny Hamlin would be pretty far ahead of Kevin Harvick as well. Or maybe the other way around, I can't remember. So essentially that takes out so much of the anticipation with it, which for the drivers that's probably a good thing. Like Denny Hamlin, I mean, if I was Denny Hamlin, I would want it to be like that. I'd just be stacking up wins and, championships. That is probably a more accurate representation of the season, I would say, which is why the first argument gets some credit. However, it does not entirely eliminate flukes or ties or anything crazy like that. So before the current playoff format, there was a year where two drivers tied in points, right? They tied in points, and it came down to wins, which is okay, but that also kind of, throws into factor the legitimacy. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not just this format that has completely destroyed the legitimacy of a championship in NASCAR. Not that it has at all, actually. It also creates much, much more entertaining finishes and races, right? So these last, 5-6 weeks, I can't remember how many weeks into the playoffs there have been, but they have been incredibly entertaining. Starting with that Daytona night race was just phenomenal. That end of that race was like I was on my feet. I was ready to go. I was waiting for Jimmy to make it in. Then he crashed. Then he came back out. Then William Byron won the race to clinch his spot. It was just absolutely riveting. And without a playoffs, you don't get that. And that doesn't necessarily, conform to just this playoff standing, because that was essentially just points, right? It ended up with a win, but points would have gotten him in anyway. So that wasn't just this playoff format. That's playoffs in general. But now, like, coming into it with, like, 4 people being cut each week, everything is just so much more intense. The tensions are so high, and it makes for exciting racing basically week in and week out. And is that legitimate? Maybe it's somewhat manufactured, I would say, but it does make for entertaining racing. Now, that speaks a lot, because it's tough to think about, but NASCAR ratings are declining, and we do need to think of ways to make things more entertaining. And while gimmicky, I do agree that this is making things much more entertaining. Can you get a fluke? Like, that is one reason, right, that I don't like that they're moving the championship to Phoenix, because Phoenix is a short track. It's like a triangle, basically, and it's a little bit more gimmicky than Homestead, right? Homestead is pretty much straight up, 1.5 miles, just oval, right? That's just basically basic NASCAR track. Which is, if you're going to do this playoff format, I think you need to have it at a track like that. Like a Homestead or like a Charlotte, maybe. Because essentially what it does, right, is it's just straight up skill. Like, no gimmicks. Like, There's some drivers that are obviously better at super speedways. There are definitely road course drivers. There's short track drivers. But I think that having, just a speedway, it's a more even playing field. There are definitely some that are better at just normal speedways, but it's more even, I would say. So that's why I think it should be at 1.5 miles rather than a short track for the finale, but that's not really the point of this video. That was kind of a tangent. I'm sorry about that. But essentially what I'm saying, right, is that it brings in a little bit of legitimacy to the last race, I suppose, because there can't be a tie. However, if everybody does wreck except one person, that does take quite a bit of the anticipation out of it, but it also creates incredible moments at the end of the race. So, overall, I think that the playoffs are very beneficial to NASCAR. I know that's kind of a hot take, but that's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Keep it civil. Let me know if you wanted to join the NASCAR Heat 5 League. Leave a like if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't. And other than that, I hope you guys are just having a blessed and safe day. And I will see you guys later.